Hey folks, I'm excited to share some stories with you today that I've written myself. Whether you're a long-time follower or just joining us, I'd love to hear your thoughts on these tales. Don't forget to give this video a like and subscribe if you're new here. Let's dive in, and I hope you enjoy. I used to work as a pizza delivery on the dark web. It's one of the best jobs I took so far. Hey everyone, I've been a lurker here for a while, but I finally decided to share my story. I'm not proud of it, but I feel like I need to get it off my chest. Maybe someone out there can learn from my mistakes. So I'm a broke college student. You know the drill, drowning in student loans, scraping by with a part-time job that barely covers rent, and eating instant noodles more times than I'd like to admit. I was desperate, to say the least. My grades were slipping. I couldn't focus on my studies, and I was constantly stressed about money. One night, I was browsing the internet, looking for any possible way to make some quick cash. I stumbled upon a forum discussing dark web jobs. At first, I was skeptical. I mean, the dark web is supposed to be full of scams and dangerous people, right? But I was desperate, and the promise of easy money was too tempting to ignore. I found a thread about a pizza delivery job. It sounded simple enough. Deliver pizzas to various locations and get paid a ridiculous amount of money. The catch: the locations were unconventional, to say the least. But the pay was more than enough to cover my bills and then some. I decided to go for it. What's the worst that could happen? After a bit of digging, I found the contact info and sent a message. Within an hour, I got a reply. The instructions were clear. Meet at a specific location at a specific time, and I'd get my first delivery. I felt a mixture of excitement and fear as I headed to the rendezvous point. When I arrived, I was met by a man in a black suit. He didn't say much, just handed me a pizza box and an address. "Deliver this within the hour," he said, his voice cold and emotionless. "And don't ask questions." The address was a mansion on the outskirts of town. The place was massive, with tall iron gates and a long driveway leading up to the house. I rang the doorbell, and a butler answered. He took the pizza without a word, handed me an envelope, and closed the door. Inside the envelope was a stack of cash, more money than I'd ever seen in my life. I thought I'd hit the jackpot. The deliveries kept coming, and the money kept rolling in. But the more I delivered, the stranger the locations got. I found myself going to abandoned warehouses, secluded cabins in the woods, and even a few cemeteries. But the scariest part, the customers. These weren't your average pizza lovers. They were different. There was something off about them. They were always dressed in expensive clothes, living in luxurious mansions, but their eyes were empty, devoid of any humanity. They barely spoke, just took the pizza and handed me the money. One night, I got curious. I mean, who wouldn't be? I decided to take a peek inside one of the pizza boxes. What I saw made my blood run cold. Inside was a pizza, but it wasn't topped with pepperoni or mushrooms. No, it was something much more sinister. Human flesh. I could see the veins, the muscle fibers, and the blood. I wanted to vomit, but I held it together. I had to. The money was too good to give up, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. Who were these people? And why were they eating human flesh? I started paying more attention to the addresses, trying to piece together any information I could. The more I dug, the more I realized I was delivering to some sort of secret society. These people were rich, powerful, and deeply involved in something dark and twisted. I knew I had to get out, but the money was too good. I kept telling myself I'd quit after the next delivery, but I never did. The money had me hooked. And then, one night, everything changed. I was delivering to a particularly remote location, a mansion hidden deep in the woods. The place was creepy, with overgrown trees and vines covering the walls. I rang the doorbell, and an elderly woman answered. She looked frail, but her eyes were sharp and piercing. She smiled at me, a chilling grin that sent shivers down my spine. "Come in, dear," she said. "I've been expecting you." I hesitated, but stepped inside. The house was filled with strange symbols and artifacts. The air was thick with the smell of incense and something else, something metallic, blood. She led me to the dining room, where a group of people sat around a long table. They all turned to look at me, their eyes filled with hunger and madness. The woman handed me a slice of pizza and gestured for me to eat. I didn't want to, but something compelled me to take a bite. The taste, it was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. It was delicious, intoxicating. I couldn't stop myself. I devoured the slice, feeling a rush of euphoria wash over me. But then, the realization hit me. I was eating human flesh. I dropped the slice, horrified at what I'd done. The room erupted in laughter, the sound echoing in my ears. "You've tasted it now," the woman said. "There's no going back." I ran out of there, my mind racing. I knew I had to stop this. I couldn't let more people be sacrificed for these monsters. I decided to find the chef, the person responsible for making these pizzas. I had to put an end to it, no matter the cost. But as I hunted for the chef, I felt the hunger growing inside me. The taste of human flesh had awakened something dark within me. I tried to fight it, but it was no use. The cravings were too strong. I found the chef in a hidden kitchen beneath one of the mansions. He was a large, intimidating man with a sadistic grin. I confronted him, telling him I was going to stop him, but he just laughed. "You can't stop this," he said. "It's too late for you. You're one of us now." I snapped. I attacked him, fueled by a mixture of rage and desperation. The fight was brutal, but I managed to overpower him. As he lay dying, he whispered, "You'll take my place. You have no choice." And he was right. The hunger was too strong. I couldn't resist it. I became the new chef, delivering pizzas made from human flesh. The money kept coming, but I was no longer in it for the cash. I was addicted to the taste, the power it gave me. I've become one of them, a monster lurking in the shadows. I can't stop, and I don't want to. The hunger controls me now. So, if you ever get a craving for pizza, think twice before you order. You never know what you might be eating. When I first started working as a pizza delivery driver on the dark web, I had no idea how deep I would sink into the abyss. The money was good, too good to pass up. But as the deliveries continued, I found myself spiraling into a world I never knew existed, and part of me wished I had never discovered. After my horrifying encounter with the elderly woman and her sinister guests, I tried to stop. I really did. I couldn't shake the memory of that night, the way the human flesh tasted on my tongue. It was haunting, yet disturbingly delicious. The cravings started subtly at first, but soon they became impossible to ignore. I skipped classes, isolated myself from friends, and avoided my family. The only thing that mattered was the next delivery, the next taste. My grades plummeted, but I didn't care. All I could think about was the pizza. I continued making deliveries, each one more disturbing than the last. The people I met were depraved, each with their own twisted desires. I remember one delivery vividly. It was to an old, decrepit mansion on the edge of town, a place that looked like it hadn't seen life in decades. When I arrived, the door creaked open and a man in a tattered robe beckoned me inside. The interior was filled with strange symbols and rituals. The man led me to a room where a group of people stood around a pentagram drawn on the floor. In the center was a pizza, its toppings glistening. Under the dim light, they were chanting, their eyes wild with fervor. When they saw me, their chanting grew louder. I placed the pizza on the altar, and one of them handed me a knife. "Join us," he said, his voice a mere whisper. "Taste the flesh and become one with the darkness." I knew I should have run, but the hunger was too strong. I took the knife, cut a slice, and ate. The euphoria was immediate, washing over me in waves of ecstasy. The group watched, their eyes filled with a twisted satisfaction. I was one of them now, bound by the taste of human flesh. The deliveries became more frequent and the locations more bizarre. I delivered to secluded mansions, hidden underground bunkers, and even a private island once. Each place had its own unique horrors, but the people were always the same: rich, powerful, and utterly devoid of humanity. One night, I received a delivery to a high-rise apartment in the city. The place was luxurious, with floor-to-ceiling windows, offering a breathtaking view of the skyline. The man who answered the door was impeccably dressed, his smile cold and calculating. He invited me in, offering me a drink. I accepted, my hands trembling. As we sipped our drinks, he began to talk. He spoke of power, control, and the secret society he belonged to. He told me how they had existed for centuries, hidden in plain sight, preying on the weak and vulnerable. The pizza was just a front, a way to initiate new members into their ranks. "You've proven yourself," he said, his voice dripping with malice. "You're one of us now. Embrace it." I wanted to scream, to run away and never look back, but the hunger was too strong. I nodded, accepting my fate. That night, I became more than just a delivery driver. I became a part of their world, a world where human flesh was the ultimate delicacy. The chef, the man I had killed, was right. I couldn't stop. The hunger controlled me. I started to enjoy the power it gave me, the way it made me feel invincible. I delivered pizzas to the most influential people, gaining access to secrets and information I had no business knowing. It was intoxicating, but with power came responsibility. I was expected to provide the flesh, to ensure a steady supply for the society. I became a hunter, stalking the streets for my next victim. The first kill was the hardest, but it got easier. Each life I took, each body I delivered, fed my addiction. I tried to rationalize it, telling myself I was just doing what needed to be done. But deep down, I knew the truth. I had become a monster, just like the people I once feared. The taste of human flesh had corrupted me, turned me into something unrecognizable. The worst part, I didn't want to stop. The hunger was too strong, the power too intoxicating. I had embraced the darkness, and there was no going back. So here I am, delivering pizzas on the dark web, feeding the insatiable appetites of the elite. If you ever find yourself tempted by easy money, think twice. You never know what price you might pay. The transformation wasn't immediate. It crept up on me, slowly but surely. Each delivery, each slice of that cursed pizza brought me further into their world. The hunger was insatiable, gnawing at my very soul. I had become one of them, but I wasn't just delivering pizzas anymore. I was supplying the meat. It started with the disappearances. At first, I targeted the homeless, the forgotten souls who lived on the fringes of society. They were easy prey, unnoticed and unloved. The guilt gnawed at me, but the hunger was stronger. Each kill brought a rush of euphoria, a sense of power that was impossible to resist. I would drive through the city at night, my eyes scanning the streets for potential victims. The dark alleys and shadowy corners became my hunting grounds. I would lure them with promises of food or shelter, only to betray them when they least expected it. The first time was the hardest. I remember the look in his eyes, the fear and confusion as I plunged the knife into his chest. But once the initial shock wore off, the hunger took over. I carved the flesh, wrapped it in plastic, and delivered it to the chef. The society was pleased, and I was rewarded handsomely. The money flowed in more than I ever thought possible. I moved out of my dingy apartment and into a luxurious loft in the city. I bought expensive clothes, drove a fancy car, and lived a life of excess. But no matter how much I indulged, the hunger was always there, lurking in the back of my mind. I started to get creative with my hunts. The homeless were easy, but the thrill of the hunt began to fade. I craved a challenge, something to make the adrenaline pump through my veins. I started targeting more affluent neighborhoods, breaking into homes and abducting unsuspecting victims. The fear in their eyes, the desperation as they realized their fate. It was intoxicating. One night, I targeted a young woman who lived alone in a nice suburban house. I watched her for days, learning her routine, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. When I finally made my move, it was swift and brutal. I broke into her house, bound and gagged her, and dragged her to my car. As I drove to the chef's location, she struggled and cried, but I felt nothing. The hunger had consumed me, turned me into a monster. The chef greeted me with a sadistic grin as I delivered the fresh meat. He patted me on the back, praising my work. I felt a twisted sense of pride, knowing I was valued in this dark society. But as the chef prepared the meat, something inside me snapped. I couldn't watch anymore. The realization of what I had become hit me like a ton of bricks. I left the kitchen and stumbled into the night, my mind racing. I had to stop this. I couldn't continue living this way, feeding the insatiable hunger. I knew the society wouldn't let me go easily, but I had to try. I made my way back to my loft, determined to escape this life once and for all. But the hunger was relentless. Days turned into weeks, and I found myself unable to resist. I tried to go back to a normal life, but the cravings were too strong. I needed the flesh, the taste that had become my obsession. I became a shadow of my former self, haunted by the lives I had taken. One night, as I sat in my loft, I received a message. It was from the society. They had a special delivery for me, something that would test my loyalty. I knew I should have ignored it, but the hunger was too strong. I made my way to the rendezvous point, my heart pounding in my chest. The address was an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the town. As I entered, I was greeted by the familiar faces of the society members. They smiled, their eyes gleaming with anticipation. In the center of the room was a large table, covered with a white cloth. The chef stood next to it, his sadistic grin plastered on his face. "Tonight, we have a special treat," he said, pulling back the cloth to reveal a young boy, bound and gagged. A delicacy fit for the most discerning palates. The room erupted in applause, but I felt sick to my stomach. I couldn't do this anymore. I had to stop them, to save the boy. But as I stepped forward, the hunger took over. I felt my resolve crumble, my willpower shattered. I took the knife from the chef's hand, my body moving on its own accord. The boy's eyes were wide with fear, tears streaming down his face. I raised the knife, ready to strike, but something inside me snapped. I couldn't do it. I dropped the knife, turned, and ran. The society members shouted, their voices echoing. In the warehouse, I didn't stop, didn't look back. I ran into the night, the taste of human flesh still lingering on my tongue. I knew I had to escape, to break free from the hunger that had consumed me. But as I fled into the darkness, I couldn't shake the feeling that it was already too late. The taste of human flesh had become a part of me, and there was no going back. I didn't know where to go. The society was everywhere, their influence reaching far and wide. I felt their eyes on me, watching, waiting for me to slip up. I moved constantly, never staying in one place for too long. The hunger gnawed at me, a constant reminder of what I had become. I was a fugitive, running from the very thing I had embraced. Days turned into weeks, and the cravings only grew stronger. I tried to satisfy them with normal food, but nothing worked. The taste of human flesh was all I craved, all I could think about. I became desperate, scouring the streets for any sign of the society. I needed to find a way to stop them, to end this nightmare once and for all. One night, as I wandered the back alleys of the city, I came across a man. He was different from the others, his eyes filled with a quiet determination. He introduced himself as Marcus, a former member of the society who had managed to escape. He had been hunting them, trying to bring them down from the inside. He offered to help me, to teach me how to fight the hunger and destroy the society. We went into hiding, moving from one safe house to another. Marcus taught me how to control the cravings, how to fight the urges that threatened to consume me. It wasn't easy, and there were times when I thought I would lose control. But with his help, I managed to hold on. Marcus also had a plan. He had been gathering information, identifying key members of the society and their operations. He believed that if we could take out the leaders, the rest would crumble. It was a risky plan, but it was our only hope. The first target was a high-ranking member who lived in a secluded mansion outside the city. We spent weeks planning the attack, gathering supplies and information. When the night finally came, I was a bundle of nerves. I knew the risks, knew that if we failed, the society would come after us with everything they had. We approached the mansion under the cover of darkness, slipping past the guards and security systems. Inside, the place was a labyrinth of hallways and rooms, each more opulent than the last. We moved quickly, taking out guards and avoiding detection. Finally, we reached the target's office. He was there, sitting at his desk, a look of surprise on his face as we burst in. Marcus moved quickly, subduing him and tying him to the chair. We began to interrogate him, demanding information about the society's operations and their leaders. At first, he was defiant, refusing to talk, but as Marcus applied more pressure, he began to crack. He told us everything: the society's inner workings, their plans, and the locations of their safe houses and meeting places. It was more than we had hoped for. With this information, we could strike at the heart of the organization. We left the mansion, our minds racing with the possibilities. Over the next few weeks, we launched a series of attacks, taking out key members and disrupting their operations. Each victory brought us closer to our goal, but the society fought back fiercely. They were relentless, determined to protect their secrets and their power. The final showdown came at one of their most heavily guarded locations, an old abandoned factory on the outskirts of town. It was their main headquarters, the place where they planned their rituals and processed their meat. Marcus and I knew it would be heavily guarded, but we were determined to end this once and for all. We approached the factory under the cover of darkness, moving quickly and quietly. The place was a fortress, with guards patrolling the perimeter and cameras watching every entrance. We managed to slip inside, taking out guards and avoiding detection. Inside, the factory was a maze of hallways and rooms, each filled with the tools of their gruesome trade. We made our way to the main chamber, where the leaders of the society were gathered. They were in the middle of a ritual, their faces twisted with malevolent glee. The sight of them filled me with rage, and I knew that this was the end. There was no turning back now. We burst into the chamber, guns blazing. The leaders were caught off guard, their ritual interrupted. The fight was brutal, a chaotic melee of gunfire and blood. Marcus and I fought with everything we had, determined to bring them down. One by one, the leaders fell, their reign of terror coming to a bloody end. As the last of them lay dying, I felt a strange sense of relief. It was over. The society was finished, their power broken, but the hunger still gnawed at me, a constant reminder of what I had become. I knew that I would have to live with it for the rest of my life, a dark shadow lurking in the back of my mind. Marcus and I left the factory, the weight of our actions heavy on our shoulders. We had won, but at a great cost. The world was a little safer, but I knew that the darkness would always be there, waiting for a chance to resurface. We went our separate ways, each of us trying to find a way to live with the horrors we had witnessed. I knew that I would never be free of the hunger, but I was determined to fight it, to keep it at bay. It was a constant struggle, but it was a battle I was willing to fight. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know one thing. I will never forget the darkness I have seen, the horrors I have faced. The society is gone, but the memory of their twisted rituals will haunt me forever. I can only hope that one day I will find a way to live with it, to find some semblance of peace. Even after our victory, the darkness lingered. The hunger never truly left me. It was a constant battle, every waking moment a struggle to resist the cravings. Marcus had gone his own way, but we kept in touch sporadically. He was fighting his own demons, much like I was. I tried to rebuild my life. I re-enrolled in college, attempting to find some normalcy amidst the chaos of my past. But the whispers of the society haunted me. I could see them in the shadows, feel their presence in the corners of my mind. The hunger grew stronger with each passing day, and I knew that my struggle was far from over. One night, as I lay in my dingy apartment, I received a message. It was from a blocked number, the text cryptic but clear. The society lives. We are coming for you. Fear gripped me, but a part of me wasn't surprised. The society had been around for centuries. It was naive to think we had eradicated them so easily. I knew what I had to do. I couldn't hide forever. I needed to face the remnants of the society head-on, to ensure they never rose to power again. The next few weeks were a blur of preparation. I gathered supplies, researched the possible locations of the remaining members, and steeled myself for the battle ahead. My journey led me to an abandoned estate on the outskirts of a nearby town. The place was decrepit, overrun with weeds and vines, but I could sense the malevolence within its walls. The society was here. I could feel it in my bones. I entered the estate under the cover of darkness, moving silently through the halls. The air was thick with the stench of decay, and the shadows seemed to writhe and twist around me. As I ventured deeper, I found a hidden passage leading to an underground chamber. The chamber was vast, illuminated by flickering torches that cast eerie shadows on the walls. At the center stood an altar, and around it, the remaining members of the society. Their leader, a gaunt man with piercing eyes, stood at the forefront. He smiled as he saw me, a chilling grin that sent shivers down my spine. "You've returned," he said, his voice echoing in the chamber. "We knew you would. The hunger has brought you back to us." I raised my weapon, ready to end this once and for all, but the leader merely laughed, a sound that reverberated through the chamber. "You cannot resist forever," he said. "The hunger is a part of you now. Embrace it." The members moved towards me, their eyes gleaming with anticipation. The fight was brutal, a desperate struggle for survival. I fought with everything I had, but the hunger gnawed at my resolve. The taste of human flesh haunted me, urging me to give in. As the last of the members fell, the leader stood before me, unscathed. "You cannot kill what is already dead," he said, his voice a whisper. "The society is eternal. You will never escape us." I lunged at him, but he vanished into the shadows, his laughter echoing in the chamber. I was left alone, the bodies of the fallen members strewn around me. The hunger surged within me, a ravenous beast that could not be tamed. I stumbled out of the estate, my mind a haze of confusion and despair. I had won the battle, but the war raged on within me. The society might have been weakened, but its influence lingered, a dark shadow over my soul. Days turned into weeks, and I found myself slipping further into the abyss. The hunger consumed me, driving me to the brink of madness. I isolated myself from the world, afraid of what I might become. The taste of human flesh haunted my dreams, a constant reminder of the darkness within me. One night, as I sat in my apartment, I realized the truth. I could never escape the hunger. It was a part of me, a curse that I would carry for the rest of my life. The society might have been defeated, but its legacy lived on in me. I knew what I had to do. I couldn't live like this, constantly fighting the urge to kill. I made my way to the kitchen, retrieving the chef's knife I had kept as a grim reminder of my past. The blade glinted in the dim light, a symbol of the darkness that had consumed me. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. The hunger roared within me, a beast that could not be tamed. I raised the knife, ready to end it all, but as the blade touched my skin, I hesitated. The taste of human flesh, the power it gave me, was too intoxicating to resist. In that moment, I made my decision. I couldn't fight it any longer. The hunger had won. I would embrace it, become one with the darkness. The society might have fallen, but its legacy would live on in me. I dropped the knife, a twisted smile creeping across my face. The hunger was my master now, and I was its willing servant. I would continue the work of the society, delivering pizzas made from human flesh, feeding the insatiable appetites of the elite. I had become the very thing I had sought to destroy. a monster lurking in the shadows. The taste of human flesh had corrupted me, turned me into something unrecognizable. And as I ventured into the night, I knew that there was no going back. The hunger had won, and I was its slave. I found a dark web forum that led me to a hidden military on the Antarctic. The place is real. Alright, this is going to sound insane, but bear with me. I need to get this off my chest, and maybe, just maybe, someone out there will believe me. I can't exactly go to the authorities without sounding like a complete lunatic. So here it goes. It all started a few months ago. My friend Ricky and I have always been fascinated by the dark web. Yeah, I know, not the smartest hobby, but we were bored and curious. We'd been exploring it for a while, mostly finding weird and disturbing stuff, but nothing that really caught our attention for long. That was until we stumbled upon a forum called Deep Freeze 99. The forum was buried deep, and it wasn't easy to find. It had this ominous feel right from the get-go, with an old-school text-only interface. The posts were cryptic, full of references to government cover-ups, secret experiments, and, most intriguingly, a hidden military base in Antarctica. At first, we laughed it off as just another crazy conspiracy theory. But as we delved deeper, we found detailed posts, maps, and even coordinates. It was like nothing we'd ever seen. Ricky and I spent nights sifting through the posts, piecing together bits of information. We found out that the base was supposedly involved in some top-secret experiments, and there were whispers about alien technology. I know it sounds like a bad sci-fi movie, but the level of detail was unsettling. We couldn't help but get sucked in. One night, after a few too many beers, Ricky suggested we go check it out. I laughed it off at first, but he was dead serious. He had this wild look in his eyes, the kind that meant he was already planning the trip. I should have shut it down right there, but the thrill of the unknown was too tempting. We booked our flights the next day. Getting to Antarctica isn't exactly easy. We had to pull some strings, lie through our teeth, and spend a small fortune, but we managed. The closer we got, the more real it all felt. We landed at a small research station, pretending to be scientists studying climate change. From there, it was a matter of sneaking out and making our way to the coordinates we had found. The journey was brutal. The cold was like nothing I'd ever experienced, biting through our gear and chilling us to the bone. But we pressed on, driven by some mix of curiosity and insanity. After days of trudging through the snow and ice, we finally saw it. The base was massive, half buried in the ice, with only a few structures visible above the surface. It looked abandoned, but there was a sense of something lurking beneath. We found an entrance, a heavy steel door that was surprisingly easy to open. Inside, the place was a maze of dark, narrow corridors. The air was stale, and every sound echoed ominously. We wandered for hours, finding empty labs, strange equipment, and walls covered in cryptic symbols. It was like walking through a nightmare. But the worst was yet to come. In one of the rooms, we found what looked like a holding cell. The door was slightly ajar, and inside there was something wrong. I can't even begin to describe it properly. It was this creature, unlike anything I'd ever seen. It was humanoid, but twisted, with elongated limbs and eyes that seemed to glow in the dark. It looked dead, but there was a sense of malevolence that hung in the air. Ricky, in his infinite wisdom, decided to poke it with a stick. That's when things went to hell. The creature's eyes snapped open, and it let out this unearthly screech. We bolted, running through the corridors, not knowing where we were going. The base seemed to come alive, lights flickering and alarms blaring. We finally found our way out and ran until we couldn't run anymore. We made it back to the research station, half frozen and completely terrified. We didn't talk about what we saw. We just wanted to get the hell out of there. But the nightmare wasn't over. A few days after we got back home, I started noticing strange things. My computer was acting weird, files disappearing and reappearing. Then I started getting messages from an unknown sender. They knew everything about the base, the creature, even the forum. They told me to find the hidden code on the forum, a code that could help the government create a weapon to destroy the creature. I was scared out of my mind, but I couldn't ignore it. If that thing was real, if it got out. So here I am, back on Deep Freeze 99, trying to piece together the code from the cryptic posts. I don't know if I can do it, but I have to try. For Ricky, for myself, for everyone. If anyone out there knows anything, please, I need your help. This isn't just some story. This is real, and it's only just beginning. After the initial shock wore off, I realized I needed to get my head straight. This wasn't a game anymore. Ricky and I had stumbled upon something far beyond our understanding, and now I was being dragged into a nightmare with no clear way out. The unknown sender's messages were relentless, urging me to find the hidden code on Deep Freeze 99. Ricky and I met up the day after the messages started. He looked as shaken as I felt. We didn't speak much. There wasn't much to say. We knew what we had to do. We holed up in my apartment, surrounded by stacks of notes, maps, and printouts from the forum. Our only link to whatever the hell was happening was that damn forum. We started combing through the posts again, this time with a clearer purpose. The posts were written in a way that only someone with a deep understanding of cryptography could fully decipher. Ricky had a background in computer science, which helped, but this was on another level. We worked day and night, barely sleeping, driven by a mix of fear and determination. The forum was full of cryptic messages, codes, and symbols. We tried everything: substitution ciphers, transposition ciphers, and even some obscure techniques we found online. It felt like trying to solve a puzzle with half the pieces missing. Days turned into weeks, and we were getting nowhere. The pressure was getting to us, and our tempers flared more than once. One night, around 3 a.m., Ricky had a breakthrough. He'd been staring at a particular post for hours, muttering to himself. It was one of the older posts, full of gibberish and random characters. Suddenly, he jumped up, almost knocking over his chair. "I've got it. I think I've got it," he yelled. I rushed over, and he explained. The post wasn't just random characters. It was a steganographic image file. Hidden within the text was an image that could only be revealed with the right software. We quickly downloaded the necessary tools and got to work. After what felt like an eternity, the image began to emerge. It was a blueprint, a detailed diagram of some sort of device. The text accompanying the image was written in a mix of scientific jargon and more of those cryptic symbols. We knew we had found something important, but we still needed to decode the specifics. As we worked on deciphering the blueprint, strange things started happening. My computer screen would flicker, and sometimes it felt like we were being watched. Ricky's phone kept getting calls from unknown numbers, and every time he answered, there was nothing but static. We were on edge, paranoid, and exhausted. One night, as we were poring over the blueprint, the power in my apartment went out. The entire building went dark, and for a moment, I thought my heart had stopped. Ricky and I grabbed flashlights and huddled together, trying to figure out what to do. Just then, we heard a noise from the hallway, a slow, deliberate creaking, like someone was trying to move silently. We held our breath, listening intently. The noise got closer, and my mind raced with thoughts of the creature from the base. Had it somehow found us? The door to my apartment rattled, and then there was a soft knock. Who is it? I stammered. No answer. The knock came again, louder this time. Ricky grabbed a kitchen knife, and I picked up a heavy flashlight, ready to swing it like a club. The door burst open, and we were blinded by a beam of light. Freeze! FBI! A team of agents stormed in, weapons drawn. We were handcuffed and shoved onto the couch, too stunned to resist. The lead agent, a stern-looking woman with a no-nonsense demeanor, started asking questions. They knew about the forum, the base, the creature, everything. It was surreal, like stepping into a spy thriller. The agent introduced herself as Special Agent Harper. She explained that they had been monitoring the forum for years, but they never expected anyone to actually find the base. When they saw our posts and messages, they knew they had to intervene. We need your help, Agent Harper said, her tone serious. That creature you encountered is part of an ancient alien threat. We've been trying to find a way to neutralize it, but the key lies in the information on that forum. Ricky and I exchanged glances. This was beyond anything we had imagined. Agent Harper continued, explaining that the blueprint we found was for a weapon, a gun designed to destroy the creature. But the plans were incomplete, and we needed to find the rest of the code on the forum. We're running out of time, Harper said. You two are our best shot at deciphering the rest of the data. We were given a choice: work with them to find the code, or face the consequences of our actions. It wasn't much of a choice. We agreed, and the next thing we knew, we were being whisked away to a secure facility. There, we were given access to state-of-the-art equipment and a team of experts to help us. Days turned into a blur of frantic activity. We were racing against the clock, trying to piece together the remaining parts of the blueprint. The forum posts were like a twisted scavenger hunt, each one leading us closer to the final solution. The more we uncovered, the more disturbing it became. The weapon wasn't just a gun. It was a last-ditch effort to save humanity from an alien invasion that had been brewing for centuries. Finally, after weeks of relentless work, we had it. The complete plans for the weapon were decrypted, and the government scientists immediately began the process of building it. But there was one last piece of the puzzle, something we had missed. Buried deep in the forum, hidden in the oldest posts, was a warning. The creature is not alone. Awakening it will bring others. They will come for us all. The realization hit us like a ton of bricks. By waking the creature, we had triggered something much larger, much more dangerous. The weapon might not be enough. The fate of the world now hung in the balance, and it was up to us to find a way to stop what we had started. After deciphering the final parts of the blueprint and understanding the full gravity of our actions, the atmosphere in the secure facility turned grim. The scientists were working around the clock to build the weapon, but the warning we uncovered haunted us. Ricky and I felt an overwhelming sense of dread. We had unleashed something far more dangerous than we could have imagined. Agent Harper kept us informed about the progress, but her face grew more worried with each passing day. The weapon was almost complete, but reports started coming in about strange phenomena around the world. Sightings of unidentified creatures, bizarre weather patterns, and mass disappearances. It seemed like the awakening of the creature had triggered a chain reaction, and the others were beginning to stir. One night, as we were reviewing the final schematics, an alarm blared through the facility. Harper rushed into the room, her face pale. "They're here," she said, her voice trembling. "The creatures have found us." Chaos erupted. The facility went into lockdown, and we were escorted to a secure bunker deep underground. The sounds of battle raged above us, screams, explosions, and unearthly roars. It felt like the end of the world was unfolding right above our heads. Inside the bunker, the tension was palpable. Scientists, agents, and military personnel huddled together, listening to the chaos. Harper tried to keep us calm, but her eyes betrayed her fear. We knew the weapon was our only hope, but time was running out. Hours passed like an eternity. The sounds above eventually faded, replaced by an eerie silence. Harper left to assess the situation, and when she returned, her expression was grim. "The creatures have breached the facility. We've lost contact with several teams. We need to activate the weapon now." The weapon, a massive, complex device, was ready for deployment. It was designed to emit a powerful energy pulse that could neutralize the creatures. But there was a catch. It had to be activated manually from the surface, and someone needed to stay behind to ensure it worked. Volunteers were called for, and a brave scientist named Dr. Morgan stepped forward. His face was set with determination, but there was a sadness in his eyes. He knew it was a one-way mission. "I'll do it," he said quietly. "It's our only chance." The plan was set in motion. Dr. Morgan was fitted with a protective suit, and we escorted him to the surface. The facility was in ruins, and the air was thick with the smell of death and destruction. The creatures were nowhere in sight, but we could feel their presence, lurking in the shadows. Dr. Morgan approached the activation console, his hand steady despite the situation. He looked back at us one last time, nodded, and then began the activation sequence. The device hummed to life, glowing with an otherworldly light. "Good luck," he said softly, and then he pressed the final button. The pulse erupted from the weapon, a blinding flash that spread outwards, covering the entire area. We shielded our eyes, and when the light faded, the creatures were gone. The weapon had worked, but at a great cost. Dr. Morgan was gone, a hero who had sacrificed himself to save us all. We returned to the bunker, exhausted but relieved. Harper gathered us together and thanked us for our efforts. The immediate threat was neutralized, but the warning still loomed over us. The creatures were part of something much larger, and we had only dealt with the beginning. The government began working on a long-term strategy, using the information we had gathered to prepare for future encounters. Ricky and I were given new identities and relocated, our lives forever changed by what we had uncovered. As I write this, I still feel the weight of our actions. The dark web forum, the hidden base, the creatures, they haunt my dreams. But we did what we had to do. We fought back against the darkness, and for now, we have a chance to rebuild. But deep down, I know this is not the end. The creatures are still out there, waiting, and when they return, we'll be ready. We have to be. The fate of the world depends on it. Life after the ordeal was anything but normal. Ricky and I were relocated to different parts of the country, given new identities and strict instructions to maintain a low profile. It was hard to adjust to a life where we couldn't talk about the most significant, horrifying experience of our lives. The memories of the base, the creature, and the activation of the weapon haunted my every waking moment. The government didn't leave us entirely in the dark. Every few weeks, Agent Harper would check in, providing updates on the situation and ensuring we were safe. The initial relief of having stopped the creatures was overshadowed by the ongoing mystery of their origin and the warning we had uncovered. We knew the threat wasn't over. One night, a few months after the incident, I received an encrypted message on my new, supposedly secure laptop. It was from Ricky. Despite the government's efforts to keep us apart, he had managed to find a way to contact me. The message was short but urgent. I found something. We need to meet. Usual place. The usual place was a bar we used to frequent before everything went to hell. I knew it was risky, but if Ricky had found something, it had to be important. I used the encrypted communication method we had devised to confirm the meeting and set off. When I arrived, Ricky was already there, looking more anxious than I'd ever seen him. We exchanged a quick, nervous greeting and found a secluded corner where we could talk without being overheard. "I've been digging," Ricky began, his voice low and tense. I couldn't just sit around and do nothing. I had to know more. I went back to the forum, but it's gone, completely wiped. But I found something else, an archive of the forum, hidden on a server in Russia. It had more information than we saw before. He handed me a USB drive, his hands shaking slightly. This has everything, more blueprints, more details about the creatures, and something else, another location. We plugged the drive into my laptop and began sifting through the data. It was a treasure trove of information, much more than we had found initially. The posts were from different users, some claiming to be ex-military, scientists, and even former government officials. They spoke of multiple bases, each with its own dark secret. But the most chilling discovery was a set of coordinates for another facility, this one located in the Arctic. The post suggested that this base was even more critical than the one we had discovered in Antarctica. It was described as the control center, the hub from which the creatures could be monitored and, if necessary, awakened. As we absorbed this information, a sense of dread settled over us. We knew what we had to do, but the thought of going through it all again was almost unbearable. Still, we couldn't ignore it. The world was in danger, and we had stumbled upon the only means to possibly prevent another catastrophe. We contacted Agent Harper, who arranged for a covert meeting. She wasn't pleased about us digging around again, but understood the gravity of what we had found. Plans were quickly put into motion for an expedition to the Arctic base. This time, we would be better prepared, armed with the knowledge and resources from our previous encounter. The journey to the Arctic was as harsh and unforgiving as our first trip. The cold was relentless, and the terrain was treacherous. But this time, we had a team of trained professionals with us, including scientists, soldiers, and engineers. When we finally arrived at the coordinates, the base was even more imposing than the one in Antarctica. It was heavily fortified with layers of security that took hours to breach. Inside, We found advanced technology far beyond anything we had seen before. The base was clearly still active, with systems humming and lights flickering. As we explored, we discovered rooms filled with alien artifacts, strange machinery, and more of those cryptic symbols. The deeper we went, the more apparent it became that this was the heart of the operation. In the central chamber, we found a massive control panel covered in alien text. The scientists worked frantically to decode the symbols, piecing together the function of the control panel. It became clear that this was the key to awakening, or putting the creatures back into stasis. But there was a catch. It required a specific code, one we hadn't yet found. Time was running out. We could feel the presence of the creatures, as if they were aware of our intrusion. Panic started to set in, but Ricky remained focused. He was staring at the control panel, deep in thought. "I've seen this before," he muttered. In the archive, there was a post, an old one. It had a sequence of numbers and letters. I thought it was just random junk, but maybe, just maybe, we frantically searched through the data on the USB drive, finding the post Ricky mentioned. It was a string of seemingly random characters, but it fit the pattern of the control panel. With bated breath, Ricky input the code. The base trembled and the control panel lit up. A deep, resonant hum filled the air, and for a moment, everything was still. Then the lights on the panel turned green. We had done it. We had activated the system to put the creatures back into stasis. But as we prepared to leave, an alarm blared through the base. A new message flashed on the control panel. Stasis sequence initiated. Warning. Primary directive compromised. Initiating containment breach protocol. The creatures were waking up, and now we had to face the consequences of our actions once again. Panic set in as the alarm blared, echoing through the cavernous halls of the Arctic base. The message on the control panel was clear. Our actions had triggered a catastrophic event. The creatures were waking up, and we had to find a way to stop them before it was too late. Agent Harper took charge, barking orders to the team. "We need to get to the containment chamber, now." We raced through the base, the walls trembling around us. The lights flickered, and strange guttural sounds echoed from the depths. It felt like the entire base was coming alive, ready to swallow us whole. As we approached the containment chamber, we were met with a reinforced door, sealed shut and covered in the same alien symbols. "Get it open!" Harper shouted to the engineers. They worked frantically, hacking into the system and bypassing the security protocols. The door finally creaked open, revealing a massive chamber filled with rows of stasis pods. Inside each pod was a creature, similar to the one we had encountered in Antarctica, but more varied and terrifying. The control panel inside the chamber was our last hope. It was designed to maintain the stasis fields, but now it was displaying warnings and errors. Ricky and I rushed to the panel, our minds racing to figure out the sequence needed to stop the containment breach. As we worked, the creatures began to stir. Their eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, and the air filled with an oppressive, malevolent energy. We didn't have much time. "Ricky, the code," I yelled, desperation creeping into my voice. Ricky's hands flew over the panel, inputting the sequence we had deciphered from the archives. The control panel buzzed and whirred, but the error messages kept flashing. The creatures were waking faster than we could react. Agent Harper and her team formed a defensive line, weapons aimed at the pods. "Hold them off as long as you can," she ordered. Gunfire erupted as the creatures began to break free from their stasis pods, their grotesque forms lurching forward with unnatural speed. Ricky and I finally managed to input the final part of the sequence, and the control panel let out a sharp beep. The lights in the chamber flickered and then stabilized, the stasis fields reactivating. Most of the creatures froze mid-motion, their bodies locked in place by the energy fields. But it wasn't enough. A few of the creatures had fully awakened and were now advancing on us. Harper and her team were doing their best to hold them off, but they were being pushed back. We needed to find another way. "There's an override switch," Ricky shouted, pointing to a lever on the side of the panel. "It will flood the chamber with the stasis field, but it's a last resort. It might overload the system." "We don't have a choice," Harper yelled back. "Do it." Ricky and I grabbed the lever and pulled with all our might. The chamber vibrated, and a deafening hum filled the air. The stasis field intensified, enveloping the entire room. The creatures let out unearthly screams as they were caught in the field, their bodies frozen in place. The system overloaded, sparks flying from the control panel. The lights flickered one last time before plunging the chamber into darkness. We held our breath, waiting for the dust to settle. When the emergency lights flickered on, the chamber was silent. The creatures were frozen, the stasis field holding them in place. We had done it. We had stopped the immediate threat, but the base was in ruins and the system was fried. The containment breach had been halted, but only temporarily. We needed to get out and regroup. We made our way back to the surface, helping the wounded and taking stock of our losses. Harper contacted headquarters, and a rescue team was dispatched to extract us. As we waited, we couldn't shake the feeling that this was far from over. Agent Harper pulled Ricky and me aside. "You two have done more than anyone could have asked, but this isn't the end. We need to find a permanent solution." She handed us a new set of documents, coordinates, and instructions. "There's another base, a final one. This time, we need to destroy it completely. No more stasis fields. We need to ensure these creatures can never wake up again." Ricky and I exchanged a weary glance. The weight of our responsibility felt heavier than ever, but we knew what we had to do. We had started this, and we needed to see it through to the end. As the rescue team arrived, and we were airlifted out of the Arctic, I couldn't help but feel a sense of grim determination. We had faced the unknown and survived, but the fight was far from over. The creatures were part of a larger threat, and it was up to us to stop it once and for all. This was our final stand, and we would do whatever it took to save humanity.